Throughout history, we've seen people make powerful choices that have resulted in transformative change and powerful movements. Nelson Mandela, Greta Thunberg, Mary Robinson, Malala Yousafzai, and Rosa Parks.
I resisted the idea of being mistreated and pushed around because of my race.
We have seen people power, or social movements, grow from an individual idea, from a small group's determination to change something that they felt to be unjust, unfair, or discriminatory. To make that one small change, creating a better world. Power can be defined as having control, authority, or influence over others. This can have positive and negative results. Power can be abused and seen as evil, biased, or undeserved. Power can be seen as good, even-handed, positive, and transformative. It can be something inherited, gained, or given for exercising values that will help move and empower others for the good of people and planet. Power inequalities have been in existence throughout the history of humanity, and they are still very much present in today's world. Power is key to understanding the relationships and structures that have historically shaped who we are and how we live, creating new and exciting opportunities, but also potentially negatively exploiting people and planet in the name of global capitalism and progression. Power is available to young people and within young people. How well they understand it, recognize it, and use it may just determine the future of all life on this planet.
Hello everyone, and welcome to We've Got the Power, the opening youth summit of One World Week with the National Youth Council of Ireland. Thank you so much for being with us. You're all very welcome. We're hoping this summit will shed some light on education issues both at home and abroad. We're really excited to be working with YouthWork Galway to bring you some really interesting discussions this evening. So this is all part of One World Week, an annual event with NYCI. The theme of this year's festival is power. We've so much planned over the next few days with performances, workshops, and interactive discussions. It's all there. So definitely take a look at what's coming up throughout the week. To start, be sure to let us know where you're tuning in from in the comment section below. We want this event to be really interactive, so we want to hear from you throughout. If you hear something you really agree with or disagree with, be sure to let us know. We've some fantastic speakers lined up for you today, so we're really looking forward to getting started. To introduce ourselves, my name's Con McCarrick and I'm the UN Youth Delegate for Ireland.
I'm muted, sorry. Good start. I'm Tara Grace Connolly, hello. I'm the other UN Youth Delegate for Ireland. It's great to be here and I'm delighted to be co-hosting today's event with Con. It's great to see so many activists and change makers in the audience. We encourage you, like Con said, to amplify what you hear here today by using the hashtag OneWorldWeek and Youth 2030, and be sure to tag us at UN Youth Ireland in your comments so we can share all your insights as well. So we're just going to run through some wee points of housekeeping before we begin. So we'd like to acknowledge first the continued support of Irish Aid in sponsoring One World Week, as well as our partners in the Youth 2030 programme, Concern Worldwide, Trogra, and the Youth Centre for Research and Development in Maynooth University. We have a resident artist on the call as well today who'll be doing some graphic harvesting, basically summarising today's discussion in art format. We'll see the end results at the very end of today's event. We have lots of great guests and not very much time at all, so we'd ask speakers to keep their contributions brief enough so that they have lots of time for a question at the end. Be sure to keep your audio on mute, like I did at the start, when you're not speaking so we can hear everyone. And the audience can use the chat function, like Colin said, to send us any questions you have throughout the discussion for the Q&A section at the end. We look forward to hearing all your thoughts. So to kick off, we're going to play a wee video from the Minister of State with responsibility for overseas development and diaspora, Colin Brophy.
Hello everyone, I'm Colin Brophy. I'm the Minister of State for Overseas Development and the Diaspora in the Department of Foreign Affairs. Now I'm delighted to have this opportunity to send you this message marking the opening of the 2020 One World Week. Irish Aid is proud of the support the Youth 2030 programme, of which this One World Week festival is a key component. We're delighted to partner with the National Youth Council of Ireland, who run this programme, and in a consortium with Concern Worldwide, Trócaire and Maynooth University. Research tells us that over 380,000 young people participate in various activities and programs provided by youth organisations across the country, with 2 in every 5 young people involved in a club or society. Over 40,000 individuals are working in a voluntary capacity in the sector. There is an impressive figures and show us the scale and reach and impact of the youth sector in Ireland. Youth 2030 is all about engaging youth in our shared global endeavours to meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Through this programme, we're working to give young people the confidence, the resilience and the capacity to think critically as well as take action in relation to the big global challenges of our time. We want to ensure that youth workers in the sector get the professional support and training they need to bring strong global perspective to youth work. For Irish Aid, the support of young people is critical. I know that through this programme you are learning about the important work of the Irish Aid programme is doing in some of the world's poorest countries. Our development education work is a cornerstone of our international development. It's only through an engaged, informed and critical public that we can continue to have support for our essential development work overseas. Work which is even more essential in the face of COVID-19. Ireland, through Irish Aid, is helping vulnerable people around the world to cope with the effects of this devastating pandemic. From Palestine to the Pacific Islands, people are being protected from hunger and destitution by the support provided by you, your family, and your community. I hope that through this programme you will all become lifelong champions of international development cooperation. I see from the One World, One Week programme that you have an interesting and a varied selection of events to come. Indeed, our Director General, Rory de Burca, will be speaking to you later in the week. Many of the issues you'll be discussing, education, climate change, food security, youth empowerment, and of course the SDGs, are core to the work of Irish Aid and core to the work which I do. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that you'll be reflecting on these issues at a pivotal time in history. The impacts of the global pandemic, the migration crisis, the Black Lives Matter movement and climate change, amongst other issues, have truly challenged to all of us to be responsible and to act as global citizens in what is an extremely complex and interdependent world. I wish you all well for the week ahead and hope that your discussion will be fruitful and productive as we come together in a shared endeavours to build a better world. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks to the Minister of State, Colin Brophy, for those well wishes. Definitely agree with those sentiments that it's only through an informed and engaged public that we can advance the 2030 agenda. So myself and Tara Grace now would just like to take a moment to set the scene, give you some background to this sort of event. So as we're speaking now, some poor sixth-year students are sitting a Leaving Certificate exam that was supposed to happen in June. We've all seen the impact of the pandemic and the predicted grades debacle, and people struggling to adapt to digital learning. So that's the situation here at home, and we wanted ourselves to know a bit more about the situation internationally. Right now, more than 1.6 billion learners have been affected by the pandemic, and that's the biggest disruption to the international education system in history. This crisis is exacerbating pre-existing inequalities, reducing opportunities for the most vulnerable to continue their learning. We're particularly aware of the impact of this on people living in poor and rural areas, young girls, refugees, forcibly displaced persons, and those living with disabilities. These losses go beyond right now and threaten to erase decades of progress. Some 23 million children and young people may drop out or may not have access to school next year, and that's due to the economic impact of the pandemic alone. It's something we're definitely aware of as UN Youth Delegates, and we'd like to take this opportunity to mention the Drive for 5 campaign launched by Ireland at the UN. This is a call to action on the education of adolescent girls, and it calls on governments to implement 5 actions to provide supportive learning environments. So why did we pick this event today? Why education? For me personally, my mum's a teacher, so I've always kind of grown up around education. She really loves her job, but hasn't been too well in the past few years, so it's been really tough on her. And every day she has to make the choice between her family, doing the job she loves, and kind of caring for her students. So that's kind of why this event was interesting to me. Tara Grace, if you want to pop in there, that might be good.
It's just had a wee break there in the internet connection. So yeah, Colin has his perspective and I have mine. My brother's a teacher, but the main reason that I was interested in education is because I'm the first generation in my family to finish school and to go to college. So the free education system up where I'm from in the north has gotten me where I am today. I wouldn't have had a chance if it hadn't been for education, and certainly wasn't something my family could ever have afforded. So I clearly have benefited an awful lot from the education system in Ireland or the north of Ireland. Okay, so we want to hear from yous and not just from myself and Colin. We're all going to get you to answer a question in the chat box. We said we were going to be interactive, so here we go. So let us know, how has education impacted your life so far? We want to know, do you think we're doing well comparatively in terms of education? You're going to be hearing a lot of different perspectives throughout the day, so we're very keen to hear, in an Irish context or wherever you're watching from, what has education done for you and how has it impacted your life so far? So you can type away in the wee chat box there. Just having a wee scan through. I'm seeing everyone's coming from all over the place as well in Ireland, which is lovely. Just having a little scan through. I mean, it's fantastic to have so many people engaging, to actually be part of the discussions today. It's really great. And to have taken the time to take part today, it's wonderful. Just having a wee flick through. There's a really good one. It's given somebody purpose in life. I mean, we're going to be hearing an awful lot of people contributing something relatively similar. All the different perspectives we're going to hear today, I mean, it's shaped so many people's lives. I think we're going to hear, like I said earlier on, we're going to hear some really, really different perspectives. We're getting people from all over the world. It's opened up opportunities. I mean, I've just said as well about coming from a background where I would have had those opportunities before. Passion to create change politically. I mean, I think everybody here today is clearly involved in some capacity in activism or is looking to engage politically. So it's great that that's what education did for you. I mean, these are some fantastic initial thoughts. I think it's going to be really great food for thought for the panel, who you're going to hear a lot of different stories from. I think we're ready. Oh, education's given me opportunities, confidence, focus, and enabled some of my dreams. That's lovely. That's actually a really nice one. I mean, I think we're going to hear a lot of these sentiments echoed again, or maybe not.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks for all your comments. Definitely keep them coming in. We're going to introduce the first guest, and that is Senator Lynn Ruane. So Lynn's an independent senator in Shannon, first elected in 2016 to the panel for Trinity College Dublin. She's a former president of TCDSU, best-selling author and proud Tallaght woman. Through her work, Lynn has been a champion for underrepresented voices and an advocate for social justice, equality and equitable access to education. Finally, and most importantly, some might argue, Lynn has been voted Ireland's favourite senator by recently winning the Shannon World Cup. So we want to congratulate her on that and all her advocacy throughout the work. We're delighted to welcome her to We've Got the Power today.
Hello.
Thanks for being here, Lynn. It's great to see you.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. So do you want, Con, maybe me to just give an overview of everything?
Can you hear us okay, Lynn?
I'm quite echoey. I don't know whether you as well.
Okay. We might just get you to talk kind of about the role education has played in your life so far, and we'll kind of leave that to you to go through. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I think, I've documented the many different ways over the years that education has impacted my life. I think even just in the introduction, you know, I am a proud Tala woman and I come from Tala West, but statistically we are possibly the most like on the scale of deprivation, we have experienced some of the most impoverished kind of access to culture, to social life, to education. So for me, growing up, education, even though it was valued, it didn't really have like a lifelong aspect to it. So education was valued within the home. My mom taught me to read at a very young age. We bought books every week. So there was a real love of education, but it was very much education for what it provided for us in the moment, in that day, being able to read, being able to participate in school. But it wasn't necessarily about looking forward to the future, about where education can bring me or what it can lead to. For me, growing up, there was 2 milestones, and one of those was the junior cert and one of those was the leaving cert. And you were doing really, really well if you got to that second milestone. And sure, if you managed to get to junior cert, that was an achievement in itself. So there wasn't really any discussion about what came after that as such. And that wouldn't be down to the fact that we didn't have any aspirations. The aspirations are always there, especially at primary level in school. But then when you enter second level school, those aspirations that I think primary school teachers kind of build you up to dream, and then you get into secondary school and there's somewhat of an undermining then of your own aspirations and a squashing down of those aspirations. And I suppose it just comes from an education system whereby teachers are doing their best, but they also become disillusioned when they are in an area of deprivation where there isn't a lot of people that go on to third level education. So for me, education, there was a big gap there, a big hole in what it was for and what it was meant to be. But when I had my daughter, when I was 15, I had left school at that stage. I was out of the school system, and I went to a community education program in Oncasan, which kind of reinstated for me an ability to learn, or a knowing that I could learn. It was much more of a comfortable space for me. And I think my understanding of the impacts of education for me are very much retrospective ones, and are something that I really was able to acknowledge in the moment as they were happening. But education at that community education level for me was that they understood, I suppose, the complexities of who I am, my life, my upbringing, my community, and they were able to provide education that was able to meet that complexity and that trauma. And if anything, it allowed me to find a sense of safety, which I think is the first and foremost thing that anybody needs to be able to actually learn in the first place. Because, you know, if you don't feel safe in your existence and in your everyday world, well, then learning is something that it's not big enough or important enough for you to be able to put your energy into it, when your energy really is about surviving or staying alive. So education for me has really transformed my understanding of what it is ultimately to feel safe, and to not be only able to recognize that education is good, or be able to recognize my rights, or be able to have a level of advocacy and agency, but it also allows me the vehicle, and it allows me it allows me implement stuff, you know, so we can know, we can understand what education is, but it doesn't mean that when we know what it is that we're able to actually do anything with it. And the more I've engaged with lifelong learning, it has allowed me to be able to not only learn, but to be able to engage in what it is to learn, and to be able to pursue and fulfill my potential, and have choice. I think education has given me choice, which means that, you know, I always remember my youngest daughter saying to me that she wants to drive an ice cream van and have a load of cats. And I remember going, what? I've worked my arse off to get us, you know, into a better situation in life, and you want to drive an ice cream van and own a load of cats? And she said, yeah, but the difference between me and you, Mum, is I'm choosing to drive the ice cream van and have a load of cats. I'm not driving the ice cream van because I have to, because I've no other option. I'm saying that if I had an option, that's what it would be, you know. And she was so young when she said that to me. She was about 7 or 8 years old. And that really opened my mind and eyes at the time to it's about choice. So education for me is about not just doing the job that's the most available to you, um, uh, but doing it because that's what you choose to do, whatever that job may be, whether it's in a professional background, whether it's in a shop, whether it's in whatever the job is. It's about that you chose it and you got up every day and you chose to do that job, or you chose to live your life in a certain way. And I suppose for me, that's what education is about. It's about agency and choice and being able to actually live in your life in a way that is fulfilling.
I mean, you've said so many things there you could really draw on, but the thing I want to say first, I mean, you said your daughter said that about the ice cream and cats when she was 7 or 8. I'm 23. I think that sounds like a good life. I might take that as it is right now. Now, clearly, you'll hear loads more from you throughout the session. You've already given us so many threads to kind of pull on. And there's someone I definitely want to mention at some point later on, which is somebody you mentioned in your book, Sister Angela. But I think we can delve into that conversation maybe later into the panel. But before we move on, I just want to kind of say that unfortunately one of our panelists couldn't make it this afternoon, but she did send a really fantastic, great video message last night. So we're going to play that before we delve into more conversation. This is a video from the UN Youth Envoy. Can it be played now, please?
Fellow young people, dear friends and colleagues, it's a pleasure to be with you all for the opening day of this year's One World Week Festival. Thank you to the island's youth delegates to the United Nations for this exciting opportunity. As we all know, this year the COVID 19 pandemic has upended our lives and our aspirations. Rather than gathering together and celebrating your activism and commitment to change in the usual joyous fashion, we have been asked to remain physically apart to hold the spread of the coronavirus. As the COVID 19 pandemic continues to evolve, it's becoming increasingly clear that its socioeconomic impacts will severely and disproportionately affect young people today and for years to come. But despite these challenges, the pandemic has also reinforced our deep seated optimism of young people's resilience, strength, and drive. Fittingly, this theme is the theme of your conversations today. As the envoy on youth, I have had the privilege to meet with hundreds of amazing youth advocates and activists around the world, and I witnessed a fundamental shift in how young people today wield power. Power is no longer synonymous with hierarchy, authority, or control. It's not something that is held on to tightly and exercised in secrecy behind closed doors by men in suits. Rather, to many young people around the world, power today is in transparency. It's fluid, not hierarchical. It's inclusive, not exclusive. Power is about collaborating and bringing about positive change, and in turn, empowering and helping others. At the same time, I've seen an increasing disappointment of young people towards political institutions caused by policies that do not reflect the topics that matter to today's youth. To truly build back better, we must ensure that young people not only get a voice, but they are heard and they are understood across all institutions, including at the UN, as the experts and leaders that they truly are. The fact that I am here today as the Secretary General's envoy on youth and the youngest senior official in the UN, it is a sign that a 75-year-old organization is changing slowly but surely. 2 years ago, the Secretary General also launched the organization's first youth strategy, Youth 2030. Co-led by the UN and youth networks around the world, the strategy aims to create a UN that is understanding of the needs of young people. It helps them to put their ideas into action, and a UN that ensures that their views inform our processes. To be able to do this, our strategy is built on a strong commitment to education at its heart. Indeed, if I want to leave you with one key message today, it is that education is the key to achieving sustainable development goals. It's a fundamental human right. It is a public responsibility. Without inclusive and equitable quality education for all, we cannot eliminate poverty, tackle inequality, fight climate change, gender equality, or promote peace. We know that inclusive education is the most powerful tool we have at our disposal in the struggle for true equality. Even before the pandemic, 132 million girls worldwide were out of school. With current school closures and economic hardships, they are now at a heightened risk of gender based violence, teenage marriages, teenage pregnancies. We must never stop fighting for education that fully includes and is sensitive to the contexts and needs of the most vulnerable and most marginalized people in our communities, including right here in your communities in Ireland. I would like to leave you today with the words of a philosopher, Hannah Arendt. Education is the point at which we decide whether we love the world enough to assume responsibility for it and save it from ruin. I urge all of you gathered here today to continue wielding your power, knowledge, and skills in fighting for a more just, more compassionate, more fair, sustainable future for all of us. Thank you.
I mean, I think that video kind of shows why Jayathma is the UN Youth Envoy. Um, well, she's not here to see it, to hear it, but thank you very much to the UN Youth Envoy for that fantastic contribution. I think she's touched on a lot of the points we're going to discuss throughout this event today. That point about the amount of girls that are in education is very shocking and something that we in Ireland really should kind of have not only a local focus on the limits of education and how we can maybe improve the education system, but they need to have a global outlook on how we can better the education system for all and how it's a tool for freedom and empowerment for people from all kinds of marginalised perspectives. So we're going to bring in the rest of our absolutely amazing panellists now. Our second panellist is Kaine Disepo. Kaine is an inspiring young leader from Botswana. He is the National Youth Delegate of all Commonwealth Affairs and a former UNESCO Youth Ambassador for Botswana. Kaine is the founder of Change Africa and has an incredibly extensive work portfolio that includes the UNDP, UNESCO, and the Commonwealth. In addition, he founded Inspired Horizons, an education NGO that has impacted over 15,000 communities through grassroots initiatives that focus on improving access to quality education to ease the challenges of structural unemployment. Kaine sits on the board of the National Youth Council of Botswana, and his work with young people has been recognised internationally. Fair play. Kaine was the recipient of the Young African Leader Award in 2018 and was recognised as one of Britain's top 100 future leaders of African and Caribbean descent. More recently, he was a distinguished speaker at the African Youth SDG Summit in 2020. We can't wait to hear Kaine's insights into We've Got the Power. He has so much information and so much history and background to share with us today.
We're going to introduce our third panelist as well. That's Eunice Eleanor Klinogo. Eunice Eleanor Klinogo is from Ghana and is the Africa and Europe representative on the Commonwealth Youth Council. Eunice represents 19 African and the 4 European countries in the Commonwealth. The CYC is the officially recognised voice of more than 1.2 billion young people around this world. In this role, she works closely with the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, in his role as Commonwealth Youth Ambassador. Eunice is a founding member of Consul Africa, an organisation that seeks to promote leadership and diplomatic programmes among young people. Eunice is one of Africa's most distinguished youth leaders, and we're absolutely delighted to welcome her today.
And last but not least, we have Emma Mehick. Emma is the UN Youth Delegate for Luxembourg. Currently an undergraduate student at Sciences Po Paris, Emma studies social sciences from an Asian perspective, majoring in politics and government. Previous to starting university, she attended the United World College in China after receiving a scholarship to study with students from all over the world and complete the International Baccalaureate. In Luxembourg, she has been active in the Youth Parliament of Luxembourg and European Youth Parliament and is now serving as the UN Youth Delegate for Luxembourg in the 75th UN General Assembly. It's fantastic to have you all here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Great. Thanks so much for all being here. It's great to see you all from so many different backgrounds from all around the globe.
Thank you.
So we'll just kind of start by asking you what role has education played in your life so far? So we might go to Kaine first. So over to you.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Thank you so much, Khan and Tara, and the whole team for inviting me. I think I speak for many, particularly of my background. I am from an impoverished, community in the 10th, I think, 10th biggest town in Botswana. And essentially, growing up, it was a lot of hardship. I remember, my dad was in the military, and my mom, she was actually, she still is a teacher of 27 years, a primary school teacher. So I grew up really understanding the power of education, quite rooted in, escaping poverty, as well as escaping issues of social injustice. So it was important for me when I grew up to try to find a way to impact my community, trying to find a way to create solutions, particularly at grassroots, that can ensure that we bridge the disconnect we're having with high politics and low politics. Unfortunately, my parents separated and they divorced whilst I was still writing my national GCSEs. And then I had to go and stay in arguably the country's poorest neighborhoods in a one room that I considered my 4-in-1. It was my bathroom, my bedroom, my living room, as well as my kitchen. But I think through the power of education, I managed to get the top results in the country. And I received the Top Achiever Scholarship Program by our government, the government of Botswana. And this really allowed me to go to the UK, where I went to the best independent sixth form, and I furthered my studies at the London School of Economics in my undergrad in international relations. Later, I did my master's in development management. But what was particularly interesting is that I always remembered back home. So you could see that most of in my thesis papers, I was particularly looking at the role of development, the role of civil society in development agenda setting, and really trying to understand and deconstruct this issue of the nanny state and how really can impact young people to ensure that they sustainable development impact. So in that regard, I think to me, essentially the role of education has one being to uplift me from poverty, but two, and I think quite profoundly, is that it has taught me what it actually means to be a 21st century learner. I think that's absolutely key, in that the 21st century learner is one, somebody who is highly passionate and well-rounded. I think gone are the times when we're really just looking at being book smart and hoping that education in that regard is the key to success. Often at times we're seeing so many people graduate and they're still unemployed. And that's a key issue for me. Looking at how we can ensure that more and more young people are well-rounded and overcoming issues of structural unemployment, if you will. The second thing is that, a 21st century learner is proactive. So they ensure that they're not only confined to what they're learning in school, but they also make sure that they go beyond the books. They're aspiring leaders in that regard. And then lastly is it's not just a successful leader. A 21st century learner is a leader of value to their community. And I think it's absolutely exceptional to see more and more young people all over the world who are really highlighting what education does from an impact perspective, not just on rooted in success, but really rooted in value for our communities. So, with that, let me just say thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited.
That's great. Thanks for those sentiments. We might go to Emma Mehik from Luxembourg next, if you want to briefly say what education means to you.
So thank you, also Keanu. So compared to him, education in Luxembourg is not regarded as something that's supposed to lift you out of poverty. So in Luxembourg, we're obviously all coming from a very privileged perspective and context. So for us, education is more about, being able to form yourself, being able to find a job, being able to define what you want to do later in life. And for me personally, education was really very much about understanding how the world works and forming my own points of view. So for me, it was not only about going to school and learning about maths and French and German and all that. It was really about more learning beyond the classroom and learning from my peers by having discussions with them about world issues. What was their perspective on this or on that? And like then forming my own opinions. And most importantly, it's about learning, like doing like whatever I learn in school and whatever I learn in the news, and then being able to link it together and being able to form sort of my own opinion and being able to link and create parallels. So because sometimes I think that's what lacks in education. It's to show us why some things are happening the way they are due to history, for example, looking at colonialism. I remember when we were talking about the surge in the refugee crisis in Europe in general, we were talking about obviously why people were fleeing their countries. We weren't talking about the roots of why people were fleeing, because their governments weren't effective, because they were, abusing human rights. But why was that the case? And we didn't really do the link between colonialism and the colonial history of Europe, which had to do with like the surge in refugees in Europe. We were just basically stating the facts. And I think that is something that's very important for me, is to create this link.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, Emma. We might go over to Eunice next. How does your kind of experience compare to what's been said so far? And what does education, what it's meant to you?
Thank you very much, Corn. I hope everyone can hear me. Can you give a thumbs up if you can hear me? Because I don't know if I am audible enough. Okay, that's perfect. So thank you very much, Corn, and thank you very much, Tara, and the rest of the organizing team for inviting me to this very important discussion. This is a topic that is very, very dear to my heart. I have a not so different story from the rest of the previous speakers. So my mom is a teacher, and my dad is an engineer. So I grew up learning throughout my life. I grew up looking at my dad, who was an avid reader, and my mom, who actually taught people how to learn and how to change themselves. So I believe education is one of the greatest gifts my parents gave me. It's actually the wind beneath my wings. Education helped me to dream. It helped me to achieve my dreams, actually. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of female figures in my life, except for my mom and my sister. And I began to question a lot of things, because I remember growing up, when you, in a Ghanaian setting or an African setting, when you're a young person, you're not supposed to talk so loudly, because it's always, priority is always given to the older people as compared to the younger people. So I grew up asking a lot of questions about why and how things work. And I believe that also helped me to develop certain skills. It also helped me to reach where I am currently in life. Education has also helped me to broaden my worldview. So I get to meet a lot of people throughout this journey. I get to work with a lot of people. I've been privileged to serve as the African Europe representative of the Commonwealth Youth Council for the past 2 years. I've also served in various capacities across the world. And I believe this is all as a result of education. It has actually given me that tool to continuously learn, to continuously change, to continuously become a better leader. So I am I'm developing certain skills, such as the soft skills that are needed today, like critical thinking skills. So you have analytical skills that are able to set you apart from your peers. Okay, so that's a brief about my journey.
Thanks so much, Eunice and Eleanor.
Thank
I'd
you
like
so
to come back
much.
to you just to talk about inequality. Have you kind of, I know you work with a lot of young people in the Commonwealth Youth Council and stuff, and I just wanted to hear a bit about if you've seen any inequalities, or have you experienced themselves in the education system in Ghana? 。
Okay, I think it's perfect now. So the Commonwealth is made up of 54 countries currently, as there was a new country added. And we are made up of smaller states and also some of the most underdeveloped countries in the world. So I would like to come from the perspective of Africa, where there's a high rate of poverty and there's a high rate of lack of social amenities. So like I mentioned, the gap between the gender gap is very heightened in that in our continent, let me put it that way. So due to this challenges, I would say that there's most people are unable to have access to education.
Okay. So I'm going to take us over to Lynn then. Lynn, you were really delving into a lot of detail earlier on about your experiences in the education system and how, being a proud Tala woman, you were still able to see discrepancies in the education system and where you were. And I'm just wondering, could you maybe speak to those inequalities you experience or have seen in Ireland and how they compare with some of the stuff you've heard so far? Clearly, they aren't the exact same, but does it mean that they're still not worthy of being discussed and openly criticised or realised?
Yeah, I suppose from the Leaving Cert has always been a big bone of contention for me. I've often heard people cite that it's the most equal exam that could exist because everybody sits it. And I used to look at people like high-level policy people, and and just kind of wondering how short-sighted could they possibly be that they can't see that sitting the same exam means nothing if what has been invested in the person sitting in the exam doesn't look the exact same, so it does completely, discounts the lives, the lived experiences, disregards race, ethnicity, everyone's different experience of the education system. So for me, Leaving Cert reform is one of the biggest inequalities that can exist in Ireland in relation to progression beyond the Leaving Cert. I think for me, if I had like a dream idea of what would exist, it would be a general access year for everybody to participate in if they choose so. So like we have amazing programs like the Trinity Access Programme, and Minute have an access programme, and so do DCU and all the other colleges. But obviously I went through the Trinity Access Programme. And for me, that was such an informative year in terms of me understanding what would be required of me to be able to progress into a third level institution. And I just think if there was a national access program in every county, to the thoughts of how many kids could access third level university then based on a general national access year, I think you would just see thousands upon thousands more people going on to university. I mean, Trinity have done studies where it shows that people who have come through the Trinity Access Programme, who have come from an unequal education system that hasn't benefited them in the way that traditional education has benefited their more privileged counterparts, have actually come out of Trinity with much higher degrees than those who have come through the ordinary process through education. So for me, the Leaving Cert is a massive inequality for people, but also the streaming of children at the age of 12 when they first enter into secondary school in the form of sitting an entrance exam. So at the age of 12, regardless of what you might be able to achieve from that point onwards, your life is pretty much decided in terms of what classes you can actually take. So you'll be excluded for taking languages, for instance. So if you don't meet a certain metric in an entrance exam, at the age of 12, you're told you will not sit in a French class, a Spanish class, a German class, because somehow this exam determines that you're not going to be able for that. Now, I set an entrance exam, scored really high, and still couldn't do languages, so different people have different abilities, and an entrance exam doesn't determine that. So the streaming of children from a very young age is a real inequality as well for me. And I think in Ireland, we thought by removing the financial aspect of going to third level university was going to be the answer, when it's not, because financial capital is just one barrier, but social and cultural capital is also a huge barrier. And also our schools don't always offer higher level exams, so everybody is squashed into ordinary and not actually given the choice to say higher level, which again is an unfair disadvantage for students. But there's so many. I could name so many different disadvantages for children. But for me, teacher training is a big aspect as well. So being able to, teachers, when they go to be trained for college, they learn about inequality theoretically. They don't learn about the impacts of inequality and the really lived understanding of it. So for me, teacher training needs to be completely transformed, that your first introduction to a school in an area of deprivation is not necessarily that you do your work experience or your teaching hours in a school of deprivation. You go and you do it in the local youth club. You go and get work experience in the local traveller programme, domestic violence, addiction, because these are the kids you're going to be working at. And if you don't go in with a full holistic view of what that child experiences in any given day, well, then you're never going to be able to provide education in a really holistic, compassionate, empathetic way that teaching, I think, should be in areas of deprivation. So I could keep going, but I'll stop there. There's so many different inequalities. Yeah.
I mean, we're going to be taking more questions from the audience, so people remember to keep firing through questions in that chat box function. If you're wanting to ask something specific to our panel, please keep typing away. I'm actually going to bring the next question to Kaine, because I could see you really nodding at one point during Lynn's answer. The next question is actually about how can education empower young people to become active, engaged, and informed citizens. Clearly, everyone on this panel is all of the above, but it'd be really interesting to hear your perspective, Kaine.
It's interesting because I was nodding a lot as you have observed from Lynn's observation, and I think just to touch a little bit on that, in Botswana, my biggest issue with the education system here are the inequalities that exist with the application process, right? So for instance, if you're from high school, you just get to university by a simple application paper, which then application form, which asks you to note down your 3 top preferences. And then they look at your grades, and whether you're qualified, you just get in. And I think I used to have a huge concern with this, because when I was, in the UK, grades is one aspect. You had to do so many things. You had to do work experience. You had to read quite a lot, extensively. And in Botswana, where it's very easy to get into university, it's quite bothering, because one, there's the lack of incentive from universities to even try and promote their services, because it's just easy to get in, right? Two, the lack of robust application really then means that many students get into degrees that are not led by a passion, that they have no prior preparation for. They just applied one day and then they just get in, and this often results in so many people either unemployed once they graduate, because they don't really understand what the degree is and what they wanted to do in life. But two, the exit level outcomes, the graduate profile, they don't understand how best to make use of it. So this then results in a lot of skills mismatch once they're trying to apply. They apply for jobs that they're not quite suitable for. And I think in that regard, it was really quite bothering. And I was nodding a lot, because I was like, it resonates a lot with the inequalities that exist here. How many young people are not led by passion, and the application process is not so robust. But I think noting from your question, how really can education positively impact young people? I think for me, so my area, I was going to say my area of expertise, but the institutions that I started. So Inspired Horizons, it really focuses on improving access to quality education. And we do this by also working with government on curriculum development, and really try to see how best to mainstream ideas of 21st century skills like critical thinking, entrepreneurial development, and most importantly, I think for me, is thought leadership. So we're now working on a program that's called the Youth in Development Accelerator Program, which is essentially on how young people can actively participate in development agenda setting, implementation, accountability, with the right policymakers, and how well we can capacitate them. So what I have seen quite instrumental from that program is many more and more young people now assuming positions of leadership. Many more, greater representation, particularly from a diversity perspective, of having adolescent girls and young women now, amplifying their voices and really taking their concerns to the area MPs and even engaging with Vice President or even the President of Botswana. And I think that speaks volume of how education itself can truly impact and bridge the disconnect that we're having, particularly when you're talking about issues of inclusion, issues of engagement, and most importantly, issues of impact. We also have a program that's called the Young Mother Support Program, which I particularly enjoy. This one is looking at adolescent girls and young women whom are either pregnant or their mothers or are at risk of contracting STIs. And this really taps into, our target is defranchised, impoverished neighborhoods. And we impart empowerment tools that can really ensure that they're self-sustainable, they're self-reliant, and also they have a voice. They have a voice that they can use to, defiantly say no when they realize the pressures, the social pressures, right? And I've seen that to be quite impactful, particularly at grassroots, of how we're giving, initiatives like this actually gives or actually amplifies, because they already have a voice. It amplifies young women and adolescent girls' voices where it truly matters. So I think that is really the impact of education in that regard.
Thanks, Kone. Sorry to cut you off. We're just under a bit of time pressure. I might come to Emma next from Luxembourg. I know a big kind of selling point of the SDGs is the idea of leaving no one behind. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how the digital divide, like how COVID-19 has impacted that kind of space.
Me among my friends is that we have a little computer on our phones, basically, like in our pockets, and we carry it every day, and we're so used to now being able to scroll through it and just have all the information there. And now with online classes, it's even worse. Like in online class, you're sitting there and you're able to basically eat, talk to your friends, your parents while being in class. And I feel like now we're just so used to being able to multitask that I think in a way it's very negative and has a very negative impact on us. But on the other hand, I think it also kind of this whole COVID-19 pandemic. Sorry, I was a bit off topic, but I wanted to get this out. Basically, I feel that with this COVID-19 pandemic, we just kind of managed to see all the the holes in our system and to see where the inequalities are. Because before that, we knew that there were inequalities, but we didn't see them. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic, suddenly the surge in unemployment rate, the number of students who don't have access to computers, who don't have access to stable Wi-Fi and can't join online classes has just increased. And it's only now that we see what this actually means and how we need to fix our system. And I think with education, and I think with also especially social media and raising awareness about how we can improve our system with UN Youth Delegate programs that help raise awareness, like with forums like this, I think you can kind of trigger some sort of innovation among young people. I think this can just kind of help young people make a little click in their head and be like, okay, we got to change something. This can't go on like this. And I know we're running out of.
That was fantastic. Thank you all so much. We're literally under the last couple of minutes. So if you want to add in a concluding comment each, 1 or 2 lines of what you take away from this or what you think are the main point you want to make to leave us with before we wrap up this part of the session and move on to the next half. So we'll go to Eunice first. Okay. Sorry, I I think we're going to have to, because we're under such tight time pressure, we're going to go on to the next person. We'll go to Lynn. Do you have any couple of lines you want to come up with before we wrap up?
Yeah, I suppose just to can you hear me? Yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah, just I mean, I think just
Oh,
yeah.
sorry, I seen your thumb go up and I thought, what have you done?
I'm getting. I don't know whether it's my
No, son.
yeah, just to wrap up, I suppose for me, you know, education is it's lifelong and it's forever, no matter how old you are, and you know, and eventually, I think if we work together around the globe with a very human rights based approach to education and to teaching and to learning, I think you know, I think we really can change the world with education, but sometimes it feels like a bit like a chicken and egg. So I just encourage people to keep going and keep having the conversations and keep finding ways to remove barriers for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Really, that was great. Emma, we'll go to you third, and then we'll go on to Kaine briefly after that.
It's very interesting how I've seen that we all come from like different contexts and what we think education means for us and for our generation. But at the end of the day, we're all in the same like kind of way. You know, we all want, like with education, we know that we can all achieve kind of the goals we need and change the world in the way we want to see it.
That was lovely. Thank you, Emma. And then last but not least, Kaine.
Hi. So what I would say is that I think education continuously is revealing that 21st century problems definitely needs 21st century solutions. We can aspire to be whatever we want, but ensure that we acquire the necessary skills to resolve quite critical issues that come up in 21st century context. And I think that's the power of education right now.
And that was like 4 brilliant concluding comments. Thank you so much. That is pretty much all we have time for this part of the session. So on behalf of myself and Colin, thank you so much to all of our amazing panelists for taking part today. It was really fantastic to hear from you all. We really appreciate your time and all your insights. Thank you all for tuning in online. We're going to check in quickly with our graphic harvester that we mentioned at the very start to see our thoughts collected in art form. Can we see it? If not, that's grand. And we'll just go on we can move on our session on to the second part with Youth Work Galway about the power of education at home. So make sure you stay tuned in for that part. And thank you so much for coming to this session with myself and Colin and our amazing panelists. Thank you.
Hello. I would like to tell you a story. And this story is about a boy who loves chocolate. See, he loves chocolate so much that he would do anything for it. But he didn't know what it is. So one day he ran to his mom and said, "Mama, what is this chocolate?" So his mother said to my son, "This chocolate is your power." So the boy said, "Mama, then what is power?" The mother said that, "My son, see, power is like a fragile object. It's so delicate, not everyone can handle it. It's like a newborn baby that just came out of his or her mother's womb. So precious, it needs proper care. And the person that is in care needs to be responsible. Therefore, my son, power is responsibility. See, power is like the boy or the girl who dreamed to be a superhero. Not the ones in capes and masks and can shoot lasers and guns from their hands, but the ones in uniforms, whose good morning and good night is our protection. Risking their lives for you and me, as they stand firm, brave, inhaling strength and courage, exhaling fear, as they represent the people in the time of needs, without any hesitation, my son. Power, my son, is the representation of all. Power is the people that stand to extinguish the flames of climate change, social exclusion, segregation, discrimination, religion phobia, fighting for justice and equality, sometimes ignoring equality for equity in favor of the minority in order to build a strong society. Power, my son, is the young people, the voices of the young people, and the people that advocate for their voices to be implemented in decision making. Decisions that are meant to shape the future. Think about it, my son. How can we make decisions for the future without the voices of the future not being present? As the youth says, a youthless policy is a useless policy. And talking about policies, power is the politician, whose policies are the policies of the people and not his or her pocket. A politician whose goals are influenced by the sustainable development goals, because he or she knows that they are the rights of the human race. Therefore, power is the right to do good. Power is your voice. It's your talent. It's your personality. It's the thing that makes you love humanity and cares for the planet. It is the thing that grants you hope, beliefs, and the drive to make a positive change. Power is you. Power is with you. Power is part of you. It's what makes you alive. Only you can access it. So come on. It's craving for your activation. Just place your hands on your chest to feel its vibration. Yes. That beat inside you is your power. So my son, anytime that you eat that chocolate, you get so much powerful.
So, hello guys. I'll just start and say that the last hour was very informative and very impressive. And for this hour, we're going to look at the power of education, but in an Irish context. So, my name is Joseph, and this is Ellen.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Ellen. We're both part of Youth Work Ireland Galway, so we're kind of putting together part two of tonight's presentation. So yeah, I suppose just to give you a run through of what to expect over the next hour. We're going to show you a video just about the power of education. We're going to ask yourselves at home a couple of questions to just get your feedback, and then we're going to have a panel discussion with some people who have, I suppose, their own experience and knowledge in the sector and can offer something and chat things through.
Yeah, so we're going to start it off. Education can be seen in many contexts, and it's important to keep in mind that one hat doesn't fit all. So for some people, their most powerful kind of experience might be at home, or it might be in school. And when you're in school, like different learning experiences such as youth work and different learning programs such as LCA, PLCs and apprenticeships, and then the obvious university, there's different options for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's, sometimes in school you feel like you have to fit into a certain, you have to conform or fit into a certain model of teaching, But tonight's
Yeah.
discussion as well won't just be about school either, Joseph. I know it'll kind of be looking at, as you mentioned there, youth work and all other
Yeah.
forms of learning. So basically, the point we're trying to make is how do you kind of find an education that includes everyone, or an
Yeah,
education
and it's
that,
important for every
yeah.
individual to find their own style and not to be pressured to fit into the kind of stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to look at the Simon Sinek video, and Simon Sinek is kind of an author, a famous author and inspirational speaker. He's done a few TED Talks and spoke at a United Nations conference. So he's going to have a video with some insights on his perspective on education. So if you can play the video, please.
Talking about education, we have to look at how we're setting up the next generation. Are we doing enough to support young people to thrive? One of the things that I personally struggled with when I went to school is there was only one way to judge a student, which is how you performed in your classes. And I was never the kind of person who was motivated by grades. I learned things at school that weren't recognized or rewarded. I have ADD, and so I was terrible at paying attention, terrible at reading, really bad at reading. I had to learn. I had to learn to go after class, to talk to students, to learn, to go up to my friend and say, "Can you explain that to me?" I became a good question asker. I became a good listener. The solutions I found to the challenges of my own childhood became my strength as an adult. So, are we doing that at school now? Are we helping kids find solutions to their own challenges, which likely will become their strengths as adults? When we talk about the what of education, we're going to talk about grades and classrooms, and we're going to talk about stuff that we generally talk about now. But if we talk about the why of education, we're going to ask entirely different questions. We're going to ask how we can help children be more curious. We're going to ask how we can help them learn empathy. We're going to ask and try and figure out how we can help foster their passions rather than just help them make a grade. So many people make a big point of the number of jobs that exist today that couldn't even conceive of 20 or 30 years ago. So of course, the same will be 20 or 30 years from now, and people will always have to play a role. There's going to be a lot of redefining what work looks like. I, for one, do not buy into the whole things that AI and robotics is going to replace everything. We like human interaction. And I think the education system can play a much bigger role in preparing us to be human. We measure a student's performance, how well they perform on a test, but we have no metrics in school for the whole person. And we ignore their ability to lead. We ignore their ability to communicate. So I think when we teach kids how to come together, how to organize, how to have opinions, I think that that's what our future will hold. They will do the things we teach them. Exams at school, of course, are important, but they're not all important. We put so much pressure on kids to make the grade, we treat education like a finite game. Like school is the only thing. But education is our whole lives. So how do we use school to prepare a child to continue to learn for their entire life? We want to be completely open to the idea that we have more to learn. The things that I think are so good about Generation Z is how open-minded they are, how accepting they are. They really are driven by inclusion and acceptance. I think that's a huge benefit to the future of society. I love that they're an activist generation. They're not just hashtagging their discontent. They're arranging rallies and they're actually showing up. They're coming of age right now, and they're coming of age in a time of stress in the world. They're seeing tension in their own countries, political divides that we have never seen before, and this is forming their worldview. I think some of the liabilities that their generation has to face and has to deal with is that we are seeing increasing rates of addiction to social media and suicide, depression, anxiety. And we're letting young people grow up and just hoping that it works out. But why not teach them? Why not guide how to interact with other human beings, what's appropriate and what's inappropriate? We can take responsibility for teaching some of these skills. I think one of the most difficult things about reforming the education system is admitting that we have accountability. If we imagine a world that's different to the one we live in now, we all have to take some responsibility.
that the future leaders are going to come from the schools that we have now. And if we better equip students now for what the future will look like, our world will be better. It's not just about the teachers and the students. Every single one of us has to play a role. Every single one of us has to take responsibility for each other at every age. It's kids who are going to school now.
Now, so that gave some food for thought, didn't it, Joseph?
Yeah, I was actually able to relate to it when he was saying that he better understands what he's learning through asking questions. I know I kind of have dyslexia and that, and the only way I can understand anything is by asking questions, and I'm often known as the question man, but that's my way of learning, and when that's facilitated, that's when successful learning
Yeah,
happens.
exactly. Like it varies from person to person, so it's kind of a bit daft to think that we can all fit into one particular template or style of learning. So, you know, I think he kind of raised that point that, you know, I suppose the importance of education, but that maybe our priorities in school have kind of become a bit skewed, and it's more, as he was saying, about, you know, getting your grades and passing exams rather than what you're actually learning along the way. So on that note, we actually have a question for everyone at home.
Oh yeah. So the question we're putting out to you is, will you imagine a valuable learning experience? And it's not what the experience is, it's what made it valuable to you. So my example of this would be, I left secondary school and I was 18 and I still couldn't read the time of a clock on the wall. As I mentioned, I'm dyslexic, but the teacher never kind of accommodated. She just done the lesson and moved on. She never actually made sure I knew how to do it. But I went to PLC college and the teacher there found out I couldn't read the clock, and she sat with me as long as it took and made sure I could end the PLC with learning how to read the time of the clock. We went through apps and everything, and it was very successful. And just that someone took her patience and her time with me made it a valuable learning experience. So how about you, Ellen?
Yeah, no, mine is actually kind of school related as well. I know we're not just talking about school, but mine, I think, would be just when I thought of that question, something that came to mind was when I was in Leaving Cert and I was really struggling with maths. I always have. And I wanted to drop down to higher level because I just wasn't keeping up with it. And there was no point in me even paying attention because I didn't know what was going on. And the teacher, like, no offense to the teachers involved, like they're doing their best, but just with the environment and everything, he was catering to the needs of the people who were able to keep up. So anyway, I eventually dropped down to ordinary level, and the teacher said, we'll do geometry today and we'll cover Pythagoras' theorem. And we'll just do a recap of what Pythagoras' theorem is. And I was kind of thinking of the different formulas. And she went right back and she talked about Pythagoras himself and why he actually came up with the theorem. And he was measuring this and that. And it was to do with something in Greece. I don't know now the exact details of it.
So you were able to engage with it, like.
And all of a sudden it just clicked. Like I realized then it all actually like related to each other and made sense. And it wasn't just sort of these, you know, arbitrary numbers that I could never get a hold of, you know. So it's kind of that kind of thing. The same with yourself and the clock, sort of thinking maybe outside the box of, you know, this style of teaching clearly isn't working with this person, so let's try something else. And, you know, it often works when you just devote that time or a different style of teaching. So I don't know if we have any questions from...
we'd encourage our viewers that are viewing on YouTube to drop their valuable learning experiences in the comments so we can get an idea of what made the experience valuable to them.
Yeah, we've one from Rachel here, if you want to read it out, Joe.
Yeah, so Rachel says, my friend taught me how to juggle, but the way he taught me was so unique. He saw the first way and he explained it wasn't working. So he adapted and tried a new way and didn't write it off and tried to adapt something to support me.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, that, you know, realizing it, that style of teaching might have worked with someone else he taught to juggle before, but it's not working with Rachel. So it's not Rachel's fault. It's just a different way of learning or way of teaching would suit her better.
So he taught in a way that would suit her and adapted to her needs.
Yeah. So don't know if we've any more questions coming in or answers rather.
And it's important to highlight that these experiences don't have to be related to education either. It can be something as simple as cooking or changing the wheel of a tire, something very simple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But impactful.
I know another good one, Joseph, was just on that changing the wheel of a car. And I know someone who they learned by doing it. So rather than someone showing them how to do it and then going away and just, expected to remember, they actually brought them out and changed each of the wheels of the car. And by the time you're 4 done, you're bound to remember that how to do it. So that's another way of doing it, rather than
and that's like a life skill as well. That would be
exactly.
essential.
Yeah. So I don't know if we have any more coming in, or maybe we'll just move on to our.
And if you think of any more, you can drop them in the comments.
Oh,
we actually have them here. Yeah. Do you want to read this one out, Ellen?
Yep. This is from Dermot. He says, my kids taught me how to play Among Us. As an educator, it's wonderful that a 10 and 14-year-old can teach me something. Yeah, definitely. I suppose when you get to the point where you have kids yourself, you probably think you've probably learned it all, but definitely not. So, and it's great that his kids were able to teach, and that's a great skill themselves. At that age, the emphasis is on learning only. But learning those skills and how to impart knowledge and wisdom yourself is definitely important. That's a great one.
Yeah, so Dara says then his economic teacher put him in charge of a climate change debate in his school. He had a hands-off approach and taught him how to lead and cope with stress. So his belief in him boosted his confidence. So kind of gave him a responsibility and
Yeah, and having someone believe in you actually goes such a long way and gives you that confidence boost. So another one there from Shirley. I love the unintended learning, when you find out something that might not be part of the lesson plan but end up being valuable learning. Definitely, yeah. And it happens so often, and as you say, it's unintended, but it's so important. And it's those things, I suppose, the school environment is great for that. You pick those things along the way. I know we're so quick to be critical of school and in that particular environment, especially in Ireland, but you do come across those kind of nuggets along the way, whether in school or outside. So very valid point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We have another one here from Shauna. My teacher tried to show me how difficult it was for Italians to understand English, so he taught me Mandarin for an hour. There you go. Yeah, that's a lesson in perspective, I suppose. Definitely. So thanks very much, guys, for your
interactions and comments.
Yeah, and your comments there. So that was kind of just to get the ball rolling and I suppose move us into our panel discussion, if that's all right with everyone.
Yeah, so now I'm going to hand over to Ellen, and she has a panel with some very different perspectives, and they're going to give their different views on education and the power of it in the Irish context. So.
Yep, thanks, Joseph. So we've 4 different people lined up. And as Joseph says there, they have their own personal backgrounds and experience, whether it be as a student or someone working in formal or non-formal education. So we thought it would make for some interesting conversation. So I might just bring those up on screen and we'll get the introductions underway. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us this evening. I might actually just start with some introductions if you just want to go around. I don't know if the screen looks the same for everyone, but Shauna, you're just on my left. So if we start with you, maybe just an introduction and go around to the other 3.
Okay, yeah, so I'm Shauna. I have done my degree in law and criminal justice. I'm a continuous learner. I did a PLC course. At the moment, I'm studying my higher level Leaving Cert exam again. So I'm preparing to go back and do that next summer so I can hopefully get into teaching.
Great. Irene?
Hi, I'm Irene. I'm the manager of Youth Work Ireland Galway. I suppose I come from a rural farming background. I'd be the first in my family to do the Leaving Cert and go to college, and that was mainly thanks to the supports of the European Union through the European Social Fund. I've continued learning, a big fan of lifelong learning, and most recently did a postgrad in family support in NUIG. Parent of 2 teenagers, so I'm kind of on the other end as well as, I suppose, the day-to-day youth work and the non-formal learning piece.
Great. How about you, Kaylee?
College in UCC. I'm studying government and politics, and I went to a DESH school, so I'm here because I'm a member of the Aspire to Youth Advisory Panel, the alumni panel, and I've just done research projects on the education systems in different countries, and I'm currently giving grinds online to DESH school students, just trying to help them learn as well.
Great.
And
finally, Manuela, yourself.
Yeah, I'm Manuela Heinz. I work in NUI Galway in the School of Education. I'm the director of the Professional Master of Education, so Initial Teacher Education Programme for post-primary teachers. I have a background in teaching myself, so before I came to the university, I taught modern foreign languages. I taught Spanish and English in different countries in Europe. And I guess now I'm also conducting research, and my research focuses on diversity in initial teacher education and diversifying the teaching profession. So I'm delighted to be here and to be here with such a wonderful panel.
So could we call you a teacher of teachers then, Manuela?
Yes, exactly.
A very important job then. So look, we'll get started. I suppose dive straight in. Kaylee, if you don't mind, if we come to you first, you mentioned there that you went to a DESH school. So I suppose give us a little bit of insight into what's that like, and especially kind of coming up to Leaving Cert. I know the Aspire program came in and sort of to support students at that time, and especially what they would do after the Leaving Cert. So what kind of influence did that have on your experience in school?
I went to a DESH school, and it wasn't like I never went to a private school, so I can't compare it, but from my own, like talking to my friends and stuff, the Aspire 2 program started when I was in 5th year. We were the first year of it, so they were a help straight away. Like, from my cousin was the year ahead of me in school, and comparing our Leaving Certs was even way different. Just like getting access to grinds, the Aspire 2 helped us with that. We were always told about the hair scheme. Whenever college came up, they were like, remember, you can apply for the hair scheme, which is the higher education access route, which a private school wouldn't have had the opportunity to get, because that's for DESH schools. But even like, not even education things, but like funding issues. Like, we got a breakfast club and a lunch club in school because it was important for kids to eat breakfast, but like, not all private schools get a lunch club or a breakfast club for free. We wouldn't really have gone for grinds without the Aspire 2 funding, because we just wouldn't have afforded it or thought about it. So that was like, when we went to grinds and we were with other schools and they were private schools, we were kind of like, oh, this is new, like we've never done anything like this before.
So you'd definitely notice the difference then, Kaylee, if it wasn't for the Aspire 2 program, would you?
Yeah, like the years ahead of us didn't get grinds funded by the school. If they wanted grinds, they had to pay for them themselves, which means our school, or my Leaving Cert year, did have a higher rate of progression than the year before us, because it might not have only been the grinds, but like the grinds weren't there and then they were, you know. So
yeah. And I suppose it really hit home that the point that education opens doors, and the fact that you were supported in your education meant that you just probably had a lot more options then to get afterwards.
Yeah, because we also used the funding to like go for a trip to the Gaeltacht to help with Irish orals. We went and we saw Hamlet, which is things you can do with money. Like the education system is better with money, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, over to you, Shauna. Just wondering, because you, I suppose, no offence to Irene or Manuela, but the two of you have been most recently through the school system in Ireland. So what was your experience like in school? And I suppose I know how you were involved in youth work and kind of non-formal education as well. So did you find your school experience was better because you had that external sort of educational learning as well? Or could you have managed with school alone? Or were there pros and cons to both?
I didn't have the greatest school experience, especially in secondary school. I had a lot of stuff going on at home. I've had a lot of energy. I found it hard to kind of engage with the curriculum in school. But then outside school, I had, like you said, youth work. That definitely kind of helped me build skills that I could use inside school and outside school. But for me, like it's a funny one because I wasn't very engaged with education while I was in school, but now I'm going back to be in the education system for who knows how long. Like, so I mean, there is good and bad sides to it, but
do you think that there are opportunities kind of for personal growth? Or now I'm trying not to be biased from my own experience, but I just felt it was a little bit restrictive in that it was kind of like you had a template, or that was the school teaching style. There was a template, and like me and Joseph were talking about earlier, there wasn't too much flexibility if you were different or you learned in a different way. So did you kind of find that, I don't know, maybe you mightn't have been able to express yourself as much?
Yeah, like there was very little room for creativity or innovation or anything that was outside the template. I found quite I didn't see the grade as appealing or a reason to work hard, like the percentage or the mark at the end of the term. Like that didn't motivate me.
Okay.
But I think
so
you
were willing to learn kind of, but there was something about school that didn't appeal to you kind of.
Yeah, I was more focused on like that personal growth, kind of building connections with people, figuring out about who I was more so. In those years, I engaged enough to get me by, but I never put extra energy in because I didn't feel that I would get a return on it. But since I left school and I've gone to college and done a lot more learning outside school, I find how valuable education is, and like how every day is a learning day. And like, you know, there's definitely a lot of I have a lot of what would you say, like gratitude for education in general. Yeah.
And I suppose, did your outlook change when you got involved in youth work as well about learning? I suppose that we always seem to have this emphasis on school, but it's more than school.
Absolutely. Like I kind of felt that you got your rewards, like, you know, you were given responsibility. There was more of a connection, like you wanted to uphold the responsibility because you knew that person and they were trusting you, and there was this like duty of care between you and the coordinator as well as the coordinator and you. And I found that was a better learning environment for me those years.
Okay, and just a reminder for everyone at home, be sure to keep sending in questions if you've got any for our panelists, and we'll get to them at the end. Forgot to mention that earlier. Also, Shauna, just on that, I suppose something that comes up with school as well is the relationship with authority. So did you think there was a kind of difference between maybe authority and how it's viewed, or maybe seniority, maybe is the better word, in school and in youth work?
Yeah, I didn't seem to have as much respect as I wanted to have for authority in school. I kind of thought there was a big disconnect between me and my teachers, and I couldn't find reason to kind of abide by the rules, even though I did majority of the time. I find it hard to find the reasons at those stages in my brain development when I was like between 13 and 17. Yeah, definitely. But but then you had authority everywhere in life. So I had to kind of get around it, and I found that youth work was like a really good learning curve for me in that field.
Right. Okay. Irene, I might bring you in here. Just from a parent's point of view, I know there's always talk of kind of including parents and making them involved in school. But I don't know, is that easy to do? Do you find in your experience you feel involved with your child's education, or would you like to be more, or are you happy, you know, they're being well looked after in school?
I would say that they're being well looked after in school, but in terms of parental involvement, there's a lot of talk about it. But I'm not sure that it really is covered in teacher education. I mean, Manuela would be better equipped to answer to that, but I suppose both of my teenagers are in different schools. One school talks an awful lot about parental involvement, but I don't actually feel involved or really engaged in their actual education. It's more kind of around things, you know, like fundraising or policy changes, or, you know, parent-teacher meetings, so about grades and how they're getting on, but not really involved in actually the education and the kind of things that are covered in school. And I mean, I know the core subjects are there and they have to be covered. Well, I suppose at least within the system that we have right now, they have to be covered in a certain way. But, you know, the optional stuff, I don't feel engaged in that either.
Right. Okay. And I'm sure it's a challenge for teachers. You've got so many parents to involve. So I don't know, is there a way that, as you say, the system could be changed to bring in their sort of their insights and involve them more? So Manuela, maybe we could touch on that with you. I suppose you do find that you got students leaving school and going straight into teacher training college, and then they come out as a teacher, but you're kind of wondering maybe how much life experience do they have, or like we all have our own set of beliefs and our own worldview, so you can't blame them for that. But is there kind of specific, I suppose, training, just out of curiosity, for student teachers that they could take in other people's backgrounds and other people's worldview into account?
Yeah. No, I agree with Irene completely. I've also 3 children in primary school, and certainly I don't feel, you know, that there's meaningful involvement. It is more practical around fundraising and so on. So yes, I mean, in relation to parents, I guess first, there hasn't been a lot, and it's certainly something we need to develop further. I guess a challenge to really do something meaningful that relates to student teachers practice is that they're at the very early start of their career and teacher development. So they're often not actually that involved with parents. You know, they're teaching their first classes, they're working with mentor teachers and so on. It is increasingly changing in that maybe teachers might bring student teachers to parent-teacher meetings for observation, but it is something that hasn't been done so much in the past. But interestingly, the Teaching Council, who oversees the accreditation of initial teacher education programs, has just last week actually published new standards for initial teacher education, and working with parents has been much more explicitly formulated in the new standards. So it is something that all the teacher education programs need to look at developing further. So what we have done in the past would have been workshops and sharing experiences and talking to students about the importance, of course, of parents, and our students have a lot of input around psychology and child and youth development. And in terms of that, of course, family and parents and backgrounds and all that is very, very, very central, but it would be more on a theoretical level, I guess, rather than in terms of practical involvement. So no, a lot of student teachers wouldn't necessarily have experience. They certainly wouldn't have a lot of experience in terms of engaging with parents during their initial teacher education. So it is probably something that also would need to continue after initial teacher education. So the Teaching Council very much looks at teacher education as a continuum. You know, the teacher education needs to continue after they finalize their first step. Initial is really only the first step, and so much learning has to happen still afterwards. But yeah, it will come in much more into initial as well as continuing teacher education. In terms
just in continuing education, you know, I know there are reskilling days and upskilling days for teachers. Do they take them, or do they have to? Do they work?
No, there is a lot, and there's a lot of very good support services available for teachers. The PDST, the Professional Development Service for Teacher, is excellent and has a lot of experienced teachers working, providing workshops for teachers in all the education centres across the country. There's also the Junior Cycle Support Service. So as you all will know, there has been very significant curriculum reform in second level education with a whole new junior cycle program, and the senior cycle is being reviewed at the moment. So that has come with quite significant continuous professional development, and some of those courses are offered for teachers to a whole school, for example, but a lot of it, a lot of the programs would still be on a voluntary basis. So there isn't really a requirement on primary teachers to a certain extent, but there isn't really a requirement yet, an absolute requirement on teachers. But again, the Teaching Council is developing and has developed a policy there. It's called COSAN, and it is all about continuous professional development. And it's often not only that it has to be courses or lectures or things like that, but it has often to do with reflecting on teachers' own experience, sharing good practice, and so on. And there is more and more happening, and particularly in the current context, I think teachers in schools are really challenged to adapt to a completely new context, and that really has triggered, I guess, a lot of interest, more interest in sharing, because everybody has to cope together, has to adapt, and has to be creative to bring life to the classroom, energy to facilitate students to think actively. It's a very challenging context. So I've heard about really very positive practices in schools where there's teach meets happening, where teachers share their experiences and ideas and trying out new things. So there is a lot happening. Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, and I know I've heard before, someone told me the line that primary teachers teach kids and secondary teachers teach subjects, and that there's this sort of attitude in Ireland that, you go into school to learn information. It's not about maybe forming ideas, learning skills. It's about how much can you absorb. I suppose that's one point of view. You might dispute that, Manuela, but do you find that the curriculum is too restrictive, or in your experience with teaching student teachers, do you find you're forced to put too much emphasis on the curriculum, or do you find there is a balance between everything else as well?
Well, there is a lot of balance in initial teacher education. The program I work on is a postgraduate program, so the student teachers would have already their subject qualifications. So actually in that program, and it is a 2-year program, there's very little on, disciplinary knowledge. They come with their disciplinary knowledge. We look at how to teach their subjects, so teaching methodologies, but then a lot of the other modules are focused on psychology of teaching and learning, on history, philosophy, and on sociology, looking at social justice, teaching for social justice, looking at diversity in the system, students' backgrounds, their development, and so on. So no, there's a lot, and certainly there is a huge emphasis on encouraging student teachers to recognize the importance of connection and building relationships with students, recognizing that everybody is individual, recognizing that there is very significant inequities in the system. And I mean, we've heard that from Kayla, for example. It's a real example of how competitive the education system is, and how, I guess, some people have a competitive advantage, and there's so many inequities. And of course there has been good policy initiatives, like, for example, DASH schools, but it still doesn't, there is no level playing field, and that can often be a surprise to maybe quite a large cohort of student teachers, because a lot of student teachers have traditionally come from white female middle class backgrounds predominantly. And not that there's anything wrong with it, but the experiences in an initial teacher education cohort aren't always as varied as they would be in the school, in the pupil cohort. And so that is a challenge for initial teacher educators to talk about all these topics, but then not actually have it represented in the student teacher body. So something hopefully that will be changing, and we're working on significant funding has been made available by the Higher Education Authority to diversify teacher education, and there is projects happening all over the country to increase participation and to attract students from underrepresented groups currently into teacher education. So it is very promising what is happening all over the country there. Good. But certainly traditionally it has been quite a homogenous group.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear that something's being done about it. Irene, just in your experience as a youth worker and a parent, you know, Manuela was talking about it there is that sort of advantage for some people. And I suppose so much of your ability to engage with learning opportunities and educational opportunities depends on where you come from and who your parents are and what their relationship with learning is. So do you find is that taken into consideration in schools and in non-formal education as well?
It's probably taken, I think in my experience, more into consideration in the non-formal environment. I suppose there's a greater emphasis on diversity and inclusion, and no more than Rachel was saying earlier about learning to juggle, how when somebody it didn't happen for them, or happened for her when she was taught in one way, the person adapted and taught in another way. I also appreciate the large numbers in our schools make that very difficult to cater for all the learning styles of all the young people. And not all schools have, you know, JET status or have homeschool community liaison officer or have school completion programs. So we can't really expect that the teachers will know all of the kind of learning history and education history of the families of the children that are in their classrooms. So I suppose maybe our expectations are very high from the current education system, and that the resources that they have, like even in the non-formal environment, you'll probably have 2 youth workers and maybe 8 or 10 young people. Like that's very different to a classroom environment.
Yeah, it's an issue that comes up time and time again. Our student teacher ratio is just higher. It's I think one of the highest, if not the highest, in the OECD. So that probably is the source of a lot of our issues, that you just don't have the time to devote to students. As you say, Irene, you kind of need, you know, the model doesn't work for everyone, so you do need to devote time to people, and that might not be possible.
Yeah, and I suppose the current education system is competitive, as Manuela said. Like it is driven by the need to achieve a certain amount of points from the curriculum by getting the grades. But I think what we forget is that this system's only been in place for a very short time within the country. Like we've probably moved to models overseas rather than come up with something that we want for ourselves. Like our current system of secondary schools are, I don't know how long they're in place, but free secondary schools would have come in maybe 60s. Would I be right with that, Manuel? I'm not sure. And before that, it was just primary education. So our education system and this way of doing things is actually really new. It's something that we could change. I mean, it is changing a little bit, but it is still very competitive. Whereas the non-formal learning environment doesn't tend to have that competitive nature to it.
And I'm just conscious of the time as well, and I just want to get back to Kaylee there. I know, Kaylee, after you left school and last year, yourselves, having come through the process, we're interested to know how does it work in other countries. So you actually carried out a research project. Tell us a bit about what that project was about and your findings, and did they, I suppose, open your eyes to certain things?
Yeah, that was really fun. So we were curious that like our education system does have its flaws, but other systems have to work. So we had partners in Finland and Macedonia, and we did a week researching in both those countries, and it just, like, we were so shocked to find out how different it is. Like in Finland, there's no private schools, you can't get social welfare if you're not in school. Their exam systems, their exams can be done over a period of time. It's not like one day, which would be better because, like, I know they introduced the bereavement process for the Leaving Cert this year, but like when I did the Leaving Cert, that wasn't in. So like if someone had an issue and they couldn't sit the exam, they just failed their leaving cert. That's not the case in Finland, and you can repeat it 3 times, and then that also, like, your leaving cert result or your final exam result doesn't affect what college course you do, because they have college course entrance exams, which was very good as well. And then in Macedonia, there was only 2 private schools in the whole country, I think they said, and they have 2 chances to repeat, and then their final grades are calculated by 60% of the grade is their 4 years, like, so the same way college would work, like 4 years, your grades for the past 4 years is 60%, and then you do an exam for 40%, which is also very different than what we have here. And it showed us so much. Like, in Finland, they were so accommodating. We did a tour of a school, and there was like a creche there, so you could bring your child, and then the people studying to be creche and Montessori workers would mind your child while you were going to do your course and stuff. Like, it was just so strange.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah. So I'm sure it was
It's so
insightful
handy.
when you're kind of used to your own sort of, you kind of think this is the only way to do it in Ireland, but there are kind of other ways, and I'm sure they probably blend in the non-formal education as well, do they, Kaylee?
Yeah, they just seemed to be more like adapting to what each person needs. Like, each person can choose how long they want to take to spend their degree, you know, so they could do 2 years and take a break or whatever. Like, it was up to the person. You could get your degree in your own time.
Yeah.
And it was
No, we're kind of all talking about this tonight. It feels like, yeah, well, it's great to chat about it, but is there anything we can do? So you think there is ways, you know, that they have managed to do it, and as you mentioned, Irene, you know, change is happening, so not to feel too hopeless about it all. But Shauna, yeah, in your experience, having kind of left school and gone into further education, and now I suppose a lot of people must be so intrigued to know why you would go back to do the Leaving Cert. I know even after you mentioned you didn't have the best of experiences with school. So how did your outlook on learning come sort of full circle in a way like that? How did it change kind of over the last few years?
Wow. I think the value of education, like seeing it in play, like from doing a PLC course after school, I found that really, really beneficial. Then college afterwards, all my education since I've kind of become an adult and can like have a bigger perspective on it, I've so much appreciation for it. Even if it's not up to everyone's standards, it definitely has a big advantage in society. And hopefully, like, the little things, there's always room to change, like Irene said.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking forward to kind of giving back a bit. I guess you kind of become a teacher, I don't know for what reasons, but I just appreciate the environment and would kind of like to get into it and see if I can pass the test with Emanuela.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of untapped potential out there, and it would be great. Yeah, there's so much that can come out of education and learning. So look, I am conscious of the time, guys, so we might actually move on to some of the questions that are coming in. We've got a good few coming in from people watching at home. So Kaylee, this one for you. Is there enough being done, in your opinion, to further the education of people from disadvantaged backgrounds?
I think there is something being done, but I don't know, is it ever enough? Like, they could always do more, but they do have the hair scheme, and colleges did visit our school. I remember when I was in 6th year, we had St. John's College of Com, UCC and CIT always, like, they always came in, and UCC Plus were always like involved in our school, and they came to every awards night and stuff, there was an awareness that, like, oh, college is possible for us. And like in our guidance counselor classes, they always went through college courses, how to apply. The Susie was a big like
support
emphasis.
For people.
I'm not sure. I don't remember hearing anything about apprenticeships or like. So we did PLCs, but we didn't get apprenticeships. I didn't hear much about that.
Idea that, you know, they were willing to support you, but it was in certain avenues rather than opening up maybe to, as you say, apprenticeships. There's, I think, over 25 different careers now you can do an apprenticeship in. It's not kind of just, trades, certain trades. So I suppose just opening our eyes to all those different avenues we can take, maybe that would help more.
Yeah, like third level was really emphasized, but like could apprenticeships be emphasized more as something that could be looked at, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, Shauna, in learning through youth work, what encouraged your empowerment, your interest in topics? Since you're hoping to become a teacher, how would you have a different approach to teaching now that kind of, I suppose, you've come around, you've been through the system? Do you think there's certain things you would definitely do differently?
I think one thing I would focus on, this is a tough question because haven't gone through the training yet, so I don't know,
Okay.
I can't foresee, but I just know that mistakes are so important, and to kind of to feel that when you make a mistake in school that you're not looked upon like, oh, you didn't know the right answer, but more that you were trying to suss out the situation. I just think mistakes are so important, and sometimes when I look back, I regret how kind of shameful I felt if I made a mistake, or the judgments I put on myself, or perceived other people to have. I think mistakes are so important, and I think if you can kind of make an environment mistake friendly, then people can kind of grow.
Okay, very good. This one isn't directed at anyone in particular, so whoever would like to take it can. The learning that takes place in youth work feels like it creates a unique opportunity that sees young people as co-producers of knowledge. Do you agree? Supports critical consciousness and opportunity for personal relationship with the wider world.
Yes is too short an answer for that question, but yeah, I suppose there is a big difference in terms of, I suppose, formal education and youth work, in terms of the nature of the relationship between the youth worker and young people. It is about co-producing. There is an equality and a respect there, so it's like equal voice. The youth worker is there to facilitate and to support, but most of the learning is generated by the young people and by the members of the group. And there is a lot of work done, or I suppose, around critical thinking, consciousness raising, and people get really involved and invested in making their communities and their worlds as well as their own lives better.
Right. How do you feel about that, Manuela? I know it doesn't directly relate to your work, say, in the postgrad, but just, do you think maybe is there too much emphasis on curriculum and learning kind of the information in each of the subjects, or do you think could it be blended more of what Irene is saying there about kind of personal responsibility and your community and that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, the junior cycle reform is all about making that change, and we are beginning to see that schools are becoming, and teaching is becoming more creative and focused on skills, like what you mentioned earlier. The whole junior cycle framework is built around skills and really on living together and developing as a human being. So I mean, while we have always been talking about holistic development as of the child in education policy, it has become much more concrete in the whole new junior cycle, and that really filters through into all the different subject areas. There have been changes have been made, but I mean, there is still a lot of pressure on teachers to cover the curriculum, as you say, and to prepare the students for exams, and it is a much more formal structure with bigger numbers, and it's because of that it's hard, I guess, to create the same feel, even though it would benefit a lot of students very much. So yeah, it is different, and I guess we can always improve, but a lot of most schools are doing an amazing job already in really trying to get to know the students in primary as well as second level, and it is more challenging at second level because there is less interaction between the subject teacher and the students. But certainly it's something that we really emphasize in initial teacher education, the importance of building relationships with the students. They won't care for your subjects unless they know you care for them. We always tell them that you know, it's just absolutely crucial. But hopefully there will be changes now also to the senior cycle. I think that has to follow on, because in the end, we often say there's this backwash effect of that big pressure of the senior cycle. And also, I guess the media doesn't help with league tables and so on, which are over interpreting the importance of it. There's so many alternative routes into further and higher education, but there's so much pressure on young people that because this big leaving cert and the point system and their passport to the future of their lives, and I think it can be really frightening. And I think it's very strong in Ireland. I mean, I'm actually from Germany. It's my background, but I've lived half my life in Ireland. But you know, it's something that struck me from the time I came here first. You know, even everybody talking about this big leaving cert, and as Kaylee says, in Germany it would be similar to the Finnish concept that you don't have these big final terminal examinations that count for everything. I mean, that is immense pressure, you know, even at the time that they hit the students. So certainly there's a lot that can be improved, but it is happening, and there is more formative assessment and the classroom-based assessments. It is beginning to spread out more. There's also now opportunities for project work in different subjects. So slowly, we are making progress, but yes, the curriculum is still pressure on teachers and students.
Yeah, it's good to hear then there is that acknowledgement that, you know, it needs to be adapted, and that emphasis on exams and academic work needs to be lessened. So it's great to hear that that's happening. I think we're a little bit pushed for time. We've it's about 4 minutes to 7 now. So I'm afraid I could talk to each of our panelists for about an hour each, I think, but we will have to wrap up there. But thanks guys so much for joining us, and I hope I can speak for myself anyway. I really enjoyed that chat and get some insight into it. So I might get Joseph back on screen, and we'll just have a quick sign off with our UN delegates as well. Hi guys.
Hi guys. Yeah, so that panel was very informative, and it was great to get their knowledge. So we posed a question actually, so what is a valuable learning experience? And we created a piece of word art. So if you can share the word art there, please. Okay, maybe not. Yeah, so that's just a piece of word art to kind of represent education that was created.
Okay.
So we're going to hop on, and earlier on in the session we were told that there was some art illustrations done by an artist. So I think we're going to have a look at them now, and they represent the 2-hour session. So this must be representing Lynn Ruane and what she was saying.
Yeah, just want to say thanks so much, Alan and Joseph, for sharing the stage with us. It was great to be here with Youth Work Galway. Obviously, we'd like to thank all our panelists. So this is some of the commentary there from Lynn Ruane. We were really happy to have the UN Youth Envoy give us a video message, and Minister Colin Brophy as well. Thanks also to Eunice Eleanor Clanogo, Kanya Diseppo, and Emma Mehick, and from myself and Tara Grace. We're just really happy that we got to share just perspective on what education is like around the world. And it's been so interesting to hear you guys talk about the issues facing students in Ireland as well.
Yeah, I hope people everyone enjoyed it.
I just want to reiterate Colin and just say thanks to everybody who took part today, all the amazing panelists. And it was really interesting to hear you as well, Ellen and Joseph. It was really interesting to listen to you both. Again, thanks to everybody who took part. And the graphic harvesting looks wonderful. It's a lovely way of being able to see the outcome of the past 2 hours. It's really lovely. So thank you again to everybody who took part.
Yeah, so thanks. I'll just reiterate and say thanks to everyone, the MCs and all the speakers and everyone behind the scenes, the youth workers and NYCI who put in all the hard work, and everyone in the background. So I think we're going to do a Mentimeter evaluation. So Mentimeter is a website where you'll log on to Menti, and you'll be given a code, and you just fill out the kind of evaluation. So if you could do that, please. Thank you. Yeah, so we are running out of time, so I'll just summarize that over the last 2 hours, it was great to get like a global and a national perspective of education, and from all the different people with all the different knowledge and skills. And thank you all for tuning in, and the results of the Menti are going up on the screen now. Yeah, so 5 people said they were over 18, and yeah, it's still processing. So what have you learned about education and power? And we're just waiting for the results to come up. So there is room for change. Education is power. Power words from powerful people. So I think we're on about our panelists. The importance of money and how it influences the opportunities to education and that. How it's important to engage.
Yeah. Some interesting points there, definitely. Yeah, I think it's that first one. Even there's room to change is good. You know, we definitely got that from the panelists. That there might be flaws with their education system, but definitely always room to adapt and change.
I think it's really interesting as well to note the one that says the importance of money, kind of that recognition of the different barriers that are in place, and but hopefully the last couple of hours kind of highlighted ways that can be circumnavigated and that we need to make the playing field a lot more equal.
Yeah, and there's one there, the value of mistakes, that one of our panelists said, and that's very important, that it's important to make mistakes, and that's how we learn from our mistakes. And yeah.
Some more there, education. Oh, next question. So what are you taking from today? Something, hopefully.
Well, that's nice to see that first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you'd want.
Exactly, yeah.
Tools to make the world a better place. That's good. And it's important to note that this kind of webinar only kind of fuels your appetite. Like there's loads of more stories and that out there, that it's getting the appetite started.
Yeah,
for this topic, like.
It's so nice to hear from like the different speakers who've overcome barriers or overcome failure and stuff, and they've gone on to really high places and stuff in their own lives since as well. So
yeah, of course,
I think that's nice and inspiring.
But it's also, when, just as Joseph said as well, about having that appetite. I know in terms of just myself and Colin's end of things, there were so many potential people who could have taken part in this discussion. We just they happened to be the guys that were on today. There are so many perspectives to hear from, and so many people can share different stories. So be really good in future to keep highlighting those different backgrounds and perspectives.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
So I think that's the wrap. So thank you everyone for watching. And
thanks guys.
Thanks guys. Take care.
Have a good night.
See yous. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.